Hi, everybody. Jack O'Malley, and it's time for a Wednesday update. I want to touch base on elections. I've talked about this in the past and kind of explained where I was at, but obviously not everybody watches every one of these videos or knows about them. But there's been a lot of questions about that lately, and I want to follow up on it. And my views on this have kind of done this over the last year, right? Close to a year now. But let me start and explain where we're at and what we're at and why I think like I do. First of all, there are a couple of groups. There is the group that says the election was stolen. We need a forensic audit. All right. Okay. Then on the other side, there's the left that says it was a big lie. This is all about, creating doubt and stealing and trying to steal the vote. And then there's a group in the middle that says, you know what? We just want to make sure our elections are safe and fair. All right? And I agree with the group in the middle, right? Everybody wants it to be safe and fair. Now, here's the interesting part of this, for me, from a personal standpoint, from a Jack standpoint, back in November of last year, when all of this was happening, I wasn't sure. I didn't know. Was this stolen? Wasn't it? I don't know. So I was like one of a dozen, maybe 15 state reps that signed on to the Texas amicus brief, which said, hey, wait a minute here, we got problems with this. And it was going to the Supreme Court. And my thought was, if the Supreme Court takes it up, we got an issue because the Supreme Court's the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court says, no, there is nothing here, we let it go, right? So I signed on to that Texas amicus brief, and I became a Satan to the big lie people. See, Jack's terrible. Well, now there's a group of people who say, Jack, you're terrible because you won't do a forensic audit. Hang on here. Let's talk about this. So here I start out with, I don't know what's going on here. I'll sign on to the Texas amicus brief and I catch hell. Okay. Now, because I'm saying you're not voting for a forensic audit, you're a terrible person, Jack. I'm not necessarily against a forensic audit. Now, here's an interesting part of that. What is a forensic audit? Now, we get the term. We've had hundreds of audits in the state, but that's not a forensic audit. But explain to me, what is a forensic audit? I don't know. So here's one of my concerns. Okay, let's have a forensic audit. We come up with a plan. Well, there's going to be 47 camps who don't like it because that's not a forensic audit. Well, what is a forensic audit? I don't know. So that's an issue. You want something, but can you tell me what it is? All right? Hang on. I'm just throwing that out there. So that's where we're at. So now I'm looking at some of the evidence that's been thrown out. Let's touch base on a couple of these things. And I'll tell you what we in the House are trying to do to make sure that that vote is secure. All right? Dead people voted. That was one of the first things that came up. There were dead people that voted. The applications that were sent out went to people from out of state. They got ballots and they mailed them back in and they voted. Well, I do agree that the Secretary of State should never have sent out those applications. That's something that is the local clerk's job. It's always been. But it is what it is. It happened. So let's talk about dead people. Investigations went and looked at every one of the complaints that came in that people had, and everybody who was supposedly dead wasn't. Actually, the Secretary of State actually purged about 30, I think the number was 3,000 dead people's votes because they had voted absentee, but from the time they voted to the time the election came, they found that Charlie had died, so they pulled that vote. So they actually pulled, I think it was 3,000 votes from dead people. Now, the people that supposedly were dead that voted, a couple of instances, it was, let's just use me, Jack Sr. was dead. But Jack Jr. voted and lives at the same address. So when these things were signaled out and then checked, they were proven to not be any bad things happened. There was an excuse for what happened or a reason that happened. For the applications that were sent out of state, they were sent. But any claim that so-and-so voted from, somewhere else, Tallahassee, it proved false. It never happened. They may have gotten the application, sure, but a ballot was never sent and a ballot was never received. So that's off. When checked, it didn't happen. But at the time, it was all about that. And I remember at the time, there was, I saw in a sort of reliable news source, I think at the time, I forget, because I remember thinking, well, how's this? My county, Benzie County, supposedly 105% vote. How could that be? How could you have 105% vote? There must have been, they're doing, nefarious things. So I call my clerk. I say, what happened? I don't know, she says. I don't know where they got that number. We have 17,000 registered voters in Benzie County. 12,000 voted. Now, I'm not great at math, but that ain't 105%. Lots of things were said early. Lots of things happened. But as you follow up on these things, they don't pan out. But it's a good rumor. It's like the old newspaper thing, the headline. Susie Smith is a drunk. That's the headline. Well, then they find out Susie Smith really isn't a drunk. And 3 days later, on the third page, it says, by the way, the other day of that headline, Susie Smith wasn't a drunk. That's what happens. All right? It's all thrown out there. It must be. We didn't like the results. That's the other thing. Think about it this way. When Trump won 4 years ago, immediately the Democrats started, it was stolen Russian collusion. Now, Trump loses, it was stolen. We got to prove it, right? Let's move on. Oh, by the way, so with dead people and all that, the legislature is looking into this. We're holding hearings. We're talking to people. We're talking to clerks, finding out what they like. And we've got 3 bills that would remove dead people from the rolls. That would allow the county clerk to do it, not like the township clerk, because in many cases, a township clerk doesn't have the staff where a county clerk, bigger entity, can do that sort of thing. So we want to make sure the county clerk can remove, and not the Secretary of State, but the county clerk, because they're closer to the situation. Also, there would be more training for clerks and that sort of thing. So we've got bills in the works. Let's talk about probably the biggest thing that really was the kerosene on the fire election night. Was a little place known as Antrim County. Most of the world never knew of Antrim County until election night. And that's when, all of a sudden, a solidly Republican county, the votes are unofficial, but they're listed as Biden winning and Trump losing. How could this be? There must have been nefarious acts. Well, what it turns out is that when it was investigated, the county clerk, because of some ballot changes, because from the primary to election day, it was a short time, and so they had a couple of reprinted ballots and things like that. So they had to change the software. Well, she only updated the software in a couple of computers, not the whole county. So that when they brought the information back, not on the internet connection, but on a flash drive, plugged it in, beep, things went wrong. It got spit out wrong. It was eventually caught and adjusted, and the numbers were done right. But immediately that became the poster child for bad doings. And I want to go on a little further here, because then there was this lawsuit where the plaintiff said, we want to be able to look at these machines, and we want to make sure that there was no bad things going on. And they got that opportunity. And when they came back with their report, there was proof, absolute proof, that the election was stolen. Right here, look, you can see. Well, when further look at that, the group that did the audit, if you will, was hired by the plaintiff. And so it appears that the information that, the Acme audit company did left out a little bit. They didn't show all the lines and to kind of prove their case. But when you look at the actual evidence, it all worked out. Now, here's the other interesting thing, because lately I've been, especially about this Antrim County thing, I and some of my colleagues have been attacked. You need to talk to this lawyer who's in charge of this, and you need to get the information. He's invited you to come and look at this information. I was at an event over the weekend where this individual claimed that I had been invited. So I did a little forensic audit of my email and phone records from the past year, and we have nothing from this gentleman. Zero. And I've checked with my colleagues. You know who's got zero? So he fibbed about that in front of these people, fired him up. I also double-checked with the chair of commissions that investigated this, and he was invited to come and present and give his information to our committee who was looking at this. And he declined. He was given an opportunity to present his case, and he declined. He also claims he has invited me specifically to come and look at his evidence, but I have not received that. But it's a good storyline when you're out trying to rile up and fire up crowds. The truth is a hard thing to work around. Because here's the other thing that's very important. Remember what I just said. The CEO of Dominion, the evil machines that everybody wants to point to, was brought in to the committee and asked pointed questions under oath. And he answered them. But the people who were claiming all this nefarious stuff wouldn't come and testify. Interesting. The CEO of Dominion testified under oath. The group that is declaring that Dominion was doing bad things, especially in Antrim County, would not come in and present. We have, because we do want to make sure our election is safe and secure, and the reason to all the big lie people out there, that's the other thing, the big lie people. The big lie, you're doing this. No. The reason that we have problems that we have, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, is because of Proposal 3 of 2018. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Anyway, for the Antrim County issue, we have a bill that would post the names of clerks who are not up on their continuing education. That's huge. We got to make sure that our clerks know what they're talking about. They're good people overall, doing a good job, but there's continuing education. If I'm a clerk and I'm not up to snuff, the people of that county need to know that Clerk Jack isn't up to snuff. This would be posted. We would also have additional training for poll workers and election workers so they know what they're looking at. Right now, our training is slim, but we're asking for them to do more and more with these absentee ballots. All right. And it would also codify rules that are already in place, but this would codify into law that says no machines, tabulators, and poll books, no machines could be attached to the internet from the time the polls are open until all ballots are tabulated. You got to remember, some machines, not the tabulators, not the voting machines, some machines have to be connected to the internet because that's just the way of the world these days. But the voting, tabulating machines, not connected to the internet. We have a bill that would make that law. Right now, it's a rule that's being followed by the clerks, but this would make it law. Let's talk about the TCF Center. And I'm moving quick here, but hopefully I'm making my points. TCF Center. What happened? Well, that's Detroit. We all know Detroit can be trouble. So there were supposed ballot dumps in the middle of the night. There were machines connected to the internet. There were all sorts of terrible things that happened there. Well, let's go through a few of these. The machines might look like they were connected to the internet, but the people in charge came again and spoke and testified and said, look, we had the machines in the TCF Center. We're all connected to a local area network, in-house network. There were some machines over here connected to the internet, but nothing was connected to the internet that were tabulators and those sorts of things. But a bundle of wires, lights blinking, somebody might think they were, but they weren't. The other issue about the ballot dump, so as I understand it, in Wayne County, what they did was they brought all of the absentee ballots in, from this part of the county, They came in at slightly different times, but they brought them in, and that's where they tabulated them. There's all kinds of rumors that there was 150 some thousand votes, 200 extra brought in. There were approximately 16,000 absentee ballots counted at the TCF Center that night. But Jack, at 3:30 in the morning, some guy was seen pushing in a cart full of boxes. Those were extra votes that came from nowhere. Well, when checking the film, there were trucks that came and arrived. They were bringing in votes from different areas. The guy that everybody's pointed out to, because at the time, that's what you heard. Remember the headline? Susie's a drunk. 3 days later, well, maybe not. The guy that everybody talked about at 3:30 pushing in the cart worked for WXYZ TV. They looked at the video. That's Charlie. He's bringing in his gear. You don't hear about it 3 days later, right? In the retraction, you don't hear about it. But you heard about it that day, 3:30 a.m. He's hauling in votes. Didn't happen. So we've got bills that would make a felony, because there was talk about they were faking applications and ballots and things. We have bills that would create a felony for false information on applications. Nothing can be connected to the internet. We talked about that. Applications from the clerks. That's the other thing. Remember, we talked about that? The application should be coming from county clerks, not the Secretary of State, right? And we also need things to clean out those qualified voter files. We've got a bill that says, look, if you haven't voted in the last 20 years, we can boot you out of this. Not to mention the dead people votes. We're working on this stuff, right? To make your election safe and secure. Also, more training. Because that was one of the other things. The chaos of the TCF Center, as I've had it explained to me, is, you're right, Detroit is a hotbed, just like every big city, Chicago, New York, Detroit. There is just like this when it comes to the elections, right? And the Democrats and the Republicans. Well, the Wayne County GOP, as I understand it, has not done the world's greatest job in recruiting people to be at centers like that. And again, training is a little sketchy. So things were happening, and the GOP people were like, wait, this isn't right. They sent out a call, like on Facebook and social media, we need help. So these people started coming. The people in charge, primarily the Democrats, were like, well, what the heck's going on here? And so there's people outside, you're stealing the election. So they covered windows. It was chaos. We need more training for people so they understand what's going on. All right, we keep moving. All right, so was the election stolen? Remember, initially, I signed on to the Texas Amicus brief. I now believe that there were lots of problems. We have to remember, Proposal 3, voted in by the people of the state of Michigan, which would allow no excuse absentee and same-day registration, voter registration. We need laws to catch up, to say, we needed drop boxes. We've always had drop boxes at the clerk's office, but because of COVID and because of this more mail-in absentee, maybe we need drop boxes at other locations. Okay, but we need to have laws that say that. We need to have laws that the box has got to be like this. It's got to have at least a camera on it 24/7, that sort of thing. Also, with this no excuse absentee, you can do it online. Well, we've had situations where when you walk in to the clerk's office and say, I want to register to vote, they say, okay, show me your ID. Here I am. You do that sort of thing online. How do you verify that I'm me? Those laws have to be put into place. It's not voter suppression. It's not Jim Crow. It's catching up to the Proposal 3. We've got a new system, whether you like it or not. We've got a new system, and we've got to have our laws to get caught up. So I think that's important. And these experts, again, I go back and I question these experts. They were asked to testify and they didn't. So here's another example. Mike Lindell had an expert guy, supposedly, and he was going around touting why our votes were not correct because the way we handled them and the way they're run out, because in all these states, the votes showed these algorithms or whatever that weren't right. Well, our elections chair said to this guy, Mike Lindell's expert, do you realize Michigan doesn't do it that way? And his reply was, oh, no. Two thoughts there. One, here's the expert. Didn't know that's not how Michigan did it. So whatever you found over there doesn't apply here. But yet it does in the headline. Susie's a drunk. She voted like a drunk. 3 days later, maybe not. Right? Do you know we don't do it this way? No, I didn't. Here's one of the interesting things. That's why I'm against that H.R. 1, I think it is, standardizing. We need to keep our elections local, state and local. That's how you defend against a hack. It's real hard to hack when you got 50 different systems, right? So how Indiana does it, Illinois does it, Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, different than how we do it. There's some similarities, obviously, but many things are different. Why? Because we just do it a little bit differently. So whatever happens elsewhere, you can't just assume that that's how it's done here. That's part of this that most people don't understand. And it's important to understand. Just because it happened there, don't mean it happened that way here. Let's go back to Detroit for just a minute. I think this is hugely important. Detroit is where this was stolen. If you're paying attention, it's plausible, right? Detroit's the hotbed of Democrats. They wanted Trump out. So it makes sense. Detroit is where the election was lost. But if you look at it, that is 100% wrong. Think about this. Wayne County, Detroit, Trump got 1,000 more votes than he did in the previous election. And the numbers, percentage-wise, were pretty much the same. Not a massive difference, right? You got to remember that more people voted than ever before, right? So keep that in mind. Where then was the difference? If you look at it logically and not trying to prove a steal, but just look at it objectively, historically Republican Oakland County and historically Republican Kent County are now Democrat. That's where the vote totals differed. Not in a nefarious way, but in a difference from several years ago. That's where the election was lost. Not Detroit. But Detroit makes a good scenario. It's plausible. So when people are up in arms, it's got to be Detroit. They had problems at the TCF Center. But when you look at it, it's not there. So let's talk about the election. Let me give you my perspective here. Again, I'm not opposed to an audit, but I need proof that it was there. Now, again, there's been a lot of absolute proof, but when you take a step back and you look at it objectively, all the proof can be answered. The symposium. Oh, I was supposed to go, everybody, you got to go to whatever Dakota and be at this symposium because they got proof. What happened there? They supposedly had data of some sort, data packets, I don't claim to understand, from China that would prove that China hacked this election. But what happened? They delayed giving out that information to this group of experts that they hired to investigate it. But then when they finally gave it to them, these experts were like, ain't nothing here. And I remember one quote, I'm not quoting them exactly, but it's pretty close. I remember the one word that stuck in my mind. He said, we were waiting to be handed evidence, and what we were given was a turd. Now, we heard about the symposium, but we didn't hear that, there really wasn't much found. The headline was there, but the results aren't as spoken as loudly. All right? So let's talk about the election from Jack's vantage point. Trump lost in the state of Michigan. How could that be? Trump was drawing thousands of people and Biden couldn't get 8. Well, my opinion, Biden played the perfect rope-a-dope. Let your opponent make mistakes. And let's remember that first debate. I voted for Trump twice. I saw that first debate, I was embarrassed, right? I'm knocking doors. Hi, I'm Jack O'Malley. I want to be your state representative. Now, let me give you a little bit of inside baseball here. When we go knocking doors, we're not just blindly. We want to go to people who are likely voters. So you use the voter rolls. You kind of find out, is this house? Yep, this is a house that's got a likely voter. They voted X amount of stuff. You know that stuff. It's public record. You can also kind of tell, is this person a Democrat, hard Republican, and in between. So I am telling you, from my knocking doors, how could this election be? People were voting for Trump. He got 74 million. How could he lose? All right. I was knocking doors, and I would go to a Republican house. Not every Republican house, but enough that it made an impression. Hey, vote for me. I'm Jack O'Malley. You support Trump? Yeah. I'm never voting for him again. This is a Republican house. I'm never voting for him again. Oh, well, why not? He's a jerk. Okay, he's a jerk, but he's got great policies, which I believe. I've always said if we could have his policies with 25% less personality, he'd still be president. But there's the problem. He's a jerk, and I'd say he has great policies. I don't care. He's a jerk. I'll never vote for him again. Here's the simple truth. You want to think about it. You loved the guy. You wanted him to be in. Many people saw him as a jerk, and they didn't vote for him because of that. People vote personality. They do. You got to accept that, right? So there's something. Now let's get to the actual vote totals. Trump, I think, got 74 million. Biden got 81 million. How could this happen? It had to be a fake. Well, think about this. Percentage-wise, this was the biggest election since 1900. There were more people voting because of absentee than ever before. So that's a lot of votes, right? Think of it this way. 4 years ago, when Trump won electorally, he still lost by 3 million votes. You kind of forget that because he won electorally. But there were 3 million people back then who said, I don't like the guy. So he lost, technically, by 3 million votes. So this time around, he's already 3 million in the hole. So when you figure all these people voted on both sides, and he lose by 7 million, he actually only lost by 4 million because he was already in the hole by 3 million. You see what I'm saying? So the problem is, and this elections to anything, we talk to our choirs, we read blogs, and we read information from our choir. We talk to people who think like us. Yeah, that could be. Sometimes you need to step out of your choir and talk to other people to find out what do they think. Because maybe they got an idea, and maybe there's something to think about there. And that's what I am proposing here. I'm stepping out of my choir. I'm telling you, I wanted Trump as president over Biden. I loved his policies, but I got to be honest with you. His personality, for lots of reasons, was not a favorite of mine. Rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. That makes a difference. So as we move through this and you talk about that, understand that I'm not against a forensic audit, but as your state representative, I have to have proof. And when I look at this, the people who are providing the proof, everything can be explained, or the proof that they come up with is weak. Right? The symposium, packets of China. We got a turd. Antrim County. Okay. Dominion guy comes in and testifies under oath. No. The group that was supposing that there was a problem doesn't come and testify when invited. That tells me something. So I know there are a lot of people who want to believe, but until, as your state representative, there is proof that I can hang my hat on, not something that I just want to be true. That's where we're at. And we do have a problem with Proposal 3 and no excuse absentee and a rogue Secretary of State who is trying to centralize all this election power at the state when it needs to stay at the local levels. Do you realize when there's an audit, and there's been tons of audits in the state of Michigan, the clerk has to go through 66 steps for an audit, not 2 or 3, 66. And everything's overseen by a bipartisan panel. We have a good system. We need to make it better because of Proposal 3 that was voted in by the people. So that's where I stand. I wanted to lay it out there for you. I know there will be people who still think I'm the devil's spawn, but I'm not. I'm trying to be reasonable. I'm trying to be a responsible representative, and I know my colleagues are too. That's why we are holding hearings. We do have bipartisan support on these bills. We do have clerks from both parties coming in and testifying and getting a feel, because we are going to secure our Proposal 3 issues and other issues that are out there. I heard somebody, Jack said that there's a little bit of fraud in every election. Don't misquote me. What I'm saying is there's problems in every election, right? Such and such county, there was a problem with the ballots, and the state Senate vote was a little funky. Nobody cares. The guy over on this side of the state doesn't care. Hell yeah, there's a little problem over there. But this election had every eyeball on it. And this election, it was so passionate. It was a little different. So I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago about choirs. We talk people who are in our choir, people who we agree with, and we just reinforce where we're at. The problem is, like a jury, we have to be, as representatives, we have to look at this, and we need proof. Dare I say, absolute proof. But the proof that has been given so far has shown that, yes, we need to upgrade some laws, but nothing nefarious. So, was this the big lie people over here? It's the most perfect election ever. No, it wasn't. We need to correct some things. And the people over here, it was stolen. You've got a lot of things that you've said are stolen, but they don't stack up. And when one of the main proponents of that, it was stolen, lies about me, I really question the ethics and the believability of that gentleman. That's where I stand. I hope it makes sense. Take care.